So, ladies and gentlemen, we are honored that we have the head of global community for Agora Pulse, and he's now got this project, Social Media Pulse, that we're going to talk about. And he's going to also maybe help us figure out what we can do to grow this Amazon community as well. So let's welcome Paul Bradley.
Hello, guys.
Welcome, sir.
I can't believe you guaranteed that I wouldn't disappoint. I'm not reissuing that guarantee. That's your guarantee, all right? So you're gonna have to carry me. I'm not. This is up to you.
Well, it's Dealcasters, Paul. We always like to give people a deal, and I feel like a guarantee. Like I'm so confident in you, Paul, that I can do that. I can guarantee it.
That makes one of us. All right, let's go.
So Paul, we met you at Social Media Marketing World, and there are certain people. Like I think everyone was just happy to be this. For a lot of people, it was their first time actually at an in real life conference and an event in San Diego, and it was great meeting you. Got along, as fast friends, and it's really great to be able to connect here. And obviously we have mutual friends and coworkers as far as Christine Gritmond is concerned, and obviously Deb, and it's kind of a small town in that respect. But it was the actual, I guess, considered the actual launch of what is now known as Social Media Pulse. Mm-hmm. And so for those who are watching for the first time and are sort of like, what is this? Is this another thing? Is this like some other, whatever? And they may not even they may have some sort of visceral idea of what Agora Pulse is. And, I'd love to be able to just kind of roll it out to you and kind of talk about maybe at its core what Agora Pulse is. Jim and I are users and love Agora Pulse. And probably only use about 15% of the maximum capacity that this thing actually has for managing social media. But the Social Media Pulse community was launched there, which is what you're headed up to do that. Can you maybe sort of speak to what each of those is for someone who's just kind of like has maybe a general idea?
Yeah. So Agora Pulse. The mothership is a French company who is a social media management tool. You've probably heard of things like Hootsuite and Sprout Social. We compete in that space, and we compete really well. We have the best reviews out of all of those companies and of our other competitors. And really great stuff that you can do with the tool, managing multiple social media accounts across platforms, clearing out your inbox across platforms, measuring your social ROI. One of the things I think is really cool that the product can do is I used to run a social media consultancy back in 100 years ago, like 2009 to 12, and I would lose clients all the time because I could never officially prove to them how what they were paying me was coming back to them as more money. And it's quite simple, right? If I had something that could have shown me that, and this is anecdotal, but it's not something I've even queued up. It's so true though. When we released this ROI tool, I was like, I might actually not be in the community business if this existed 12 years ago, which in hindsight, I'm glad it didn't because I love the field that I'm in. But, I would lose clients all the time for that reason. And everybody on the Social Media Pulse team is somebody who's been either a sole proprietor or a business owner in that capacity, providing services. And we all kind of say the same thing. So Agora Pulse is a product that we really believe in. And ironically, Social Media Pulse, the community that we've built, has nothing to do with Agora Pulse, the product. Okay. So there is an odd distinction there. We often call it the separation of church and state. We don't market Agora Pulse here in the community. When I began interviewing for this job a little over a year ago, I was really taken aback by the passion of Emmerich, our CEO, and Michael Angeletta, who's my boss, our chief revenue officer. They were just really wanting to do something for the industry and say, we've got this. We had the existing social media manager school that Phyllis Kerr is still part of and running, and that Andrea Vall had been a part of in the past. And people in our industry, they know that property. And we just, after purchasing it 2 years ago, couldn't come up with the right idea for how to steward it. And so this community idea was born out of a few things. One, because we wanted to have our own narrative around, industry news, around upskilling, around like helping people take responsibility for getting a better job and everything like that. And so that to us wasn't just the courses that we were developing in school. It was kind of a bigger thing, right? And so as we all talked through it in the interview process, the three of us, it became this whole thing, which is Social Media Pulse. That is a comprehensive one-stop shop for you to network with other social media managers who are like you, who are people you want to be like, who are people you're going to be like, who are people you used to be like, service them, help them in whatever way you can. And then, turn that around and learn how you can get a better job, either through the experiences of others or through the Pulse Academy, which is the next step of Social Media Manager School, which right now has 7 brand new courses. But it's going to have more, and it's going to keep morphing, and we're going to keep building this machine where our job board, which by the way, today, Amanda Robinson just told me that she got a job from our job board. It was just like one of those moments.
Wow.
Yeah. She's working with Meta now because of our job board. So
amazing.
That's so meta.
Yeah, exactly. And she's brilliant. That's why she got the job. We can't take that much credit. It is very meta though. It's got a lot of working parts that are all meant to be sort of a soup to nuts place for you to come. Like the ideal state is you think of a person who comes and has no knowledge of how to service clients or work on a social media team. And they start taking courses and they start interacting in the community and they start, helping other people once they've learned something. They get certifications. Suddenly that job pops up like it did for Amanda, who has her own bona fides and doesn't need anything that she's earned in our community. But in this case, somebody could have earned the bona fides in the community, applied for that job. And because of the way the job was posted, they know immediately that person's qualified because the certifications that we've given them are vetted by those very hiring managers and whatnot. So it's all free. It costs nothing. Like I said, it's back to that sort of wanting to take responsibility for the industry, not wanting to pass on any cost to somebody who wants to become an expert in this industry, in this field, and sort of just like pass that along to them. And it's a big part of how we feel like we can spread the values of Agorapulse, which internally Agorapulse is quite a benevolent company and it's quite a pleasant place to work. And I can't restate that enough. I tend to be somewhat cynical about some of these things, and I've worked at some companies that have made me a little cynical or significantly cynical. I won't name them, but I'm not lying when I say that about our company is the culture that Emmerich has set from the top. He's the best. So I'm really excited to have gotten this opportunity to run a community that's out there just specifically to help people. And I've been doing that for 10 years. And when you work in a support community or a marketing community, your goal is to help people. But at the end of the day, the company's goal is for you to deflect calls or for you to drive people to buy products and everything. So you can live as though all you care about is helping people, but it doesn't go both directions. In this case, it does. So for me as a community manager, you always kind of have those two things in contrast with one another. And I don't in this case, which is kind of ideal. And so I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, because it's like, it's powered by Agorapulse, right? But what you're doing, you have to maintain trust with someone that there's, okay, when is the sales pitch coming, right?
Yeah.
When am I gonna, when is the paywall coming? Like what, all of that kind of stuff is, would you consider that an important part of community? Because how many times have some of us been involved in a quote unquote community or joined somebody's thing only to be funnel pounded later by, a chain of CRM that all of a sudden it's like, how did I get into this thing where, you have to break free of these other like non-trustworthy sources and come to a place where it's like, hey, guess what? This is free and we're giving to you. It's an interesting balance that you guys have.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's true that trust is the key thing in community. Like you want a community manager to have empathy. You want them to have curiosity. And those are the words I talk about from the personnel side all the time. But from the community side, it's all about building trust, which takes empathy and curiosity. Because at the end of the day, with any community, any community that you're creating, you're asking somebody to adopt something that they don't feel they need, right? It's up to you to prove it to them. And so you have to get them you have to get into their daily routine in some capacity that is, different from what they're used to. And so in order to do that, they're going to have to trust you. And so that trust as well, you have to nurture it every day, and you can never break it. In the course of our discovery process, we were working to figure out what the pain points were for social media managers across the board. And I did that for months, just interviewing people. And I talked to somebody who had previously been heavily engaged in a competitor's community. And she said, one day they just sort of abandoned the project. And they only abandoned it for like a month. But they told us that it was not, we didn't know how long it would be. They came back a month later, they tried to get us all back, and we were done. It was like, that was it. You broke trust, and now we're not doing it. And so, all it takes is for you to make the wrong misstep once or twice or whatever, and all the work you've done for years can absolutely be out the window. So yes, to your question, Chris, absolutely trust is the most important thing in online communities, even when it's a contained online community. Like I've worked for product communities where you get access to it because you are a customer of that company and you SSO in right from that product. Those people still have other places to go where they can get information about that. You, as the representative of that company, still have a lot of trust you need to build. So that's kind of where I started was for a number of years working for companies where there kind of wasn't some trust about where they should be getting this information, where it's like, I'm getting it from this LinkedIn group. Why should I get it from you? And one of the things I talk about all the time is you're talking about not using the rented land or, doing things in different places. One of the things I think about is don't try to compete with platforms that are doing things well already. Like, I'm not going to compete with Facebook. Like, if we want to make this like a Facebook group, well, I'm not competing with Facebook. Facebook does something and it does it well, and it does it well for those people. I want those people to develop a new, canal in their brain about how to do something else or get information another way. And so kind of that's what you're up against always. And that's what we were up against back in those days, trying to get people over from LinkedIn groups. And so it's been the same game. It's just been a little bit different. So when you're talking about like moving away from like the traditional social media platforms, it's just an evolution of that same concept of you're constantly trying to get people to come to something like Amazon Live, right? Which they don't necessarily know that's a thing, and it never ends. And it seems to just be changing ever faster, the places where we consume this stuff.
Yeah, and it sounds to me like, and we had this conversation in San Diego as well. You can build a community on an existing thing like Discord, or an existing thing like Slack, or an existing thing like all of Facebook groups or whatever. But you intentionally built it somewhere else in order to because you had experience doing that, but you also wanted to make it specifically for what you wanted to accomplish with Social Media Pulse.
Yeah. And so one of the things about building community that I always say is if somebody tells you they know how to do it across the board, stop listening to that person, because the community is different every single use case that you enter into. And so I've done things in communities that have worked really well, and I've taken them right to almost an identical community, right? Let's say the difference was it's a community for the same product owner, one in the US, one in Canada. And those same tactics fell flat in Canada because there's a difference between a Canadian person and an American person, as much as we joke. Like culturally, there's a difference, and you have to think about those things. And so, like when we're building community, that's the most important thing from my perspective.
Yeah, we've got a question on Amazon from Zach Mitchum, and he wanted to know, he just recently decided to start a paid community over a course. And what do you think of that? I mean, do you think that's, because if you think about what you guys originally had with, before you developed this, it was a school, right? It was a social media manager school, like you talked about. Now you've developed a new community, but you still have the courses there for the community to enjoy. What's your thoughts on that?
I think it's great. And particularly if you can get people to do it. In our case, I think that making what we're doing free is a luxury that Agorapulse has earned through its own success, right? But everybody has to eat, right? And ultimately, at the end of the day, there will still be things that our community is gauged on in terms of its value and the spend in the company and everything like that. So, people who are trying to get out there and build community from scratch, obviously they need to try to build revenue. And so I think that when you're talking about a course and something you've put blood, sweat, tears, expertise into, there's tons and tons of precedent for paid communities around courses. To your point, the Social Media Manager School, right? And I think as well, if you're a practitioner individually, there's a living to be made there. Absolutely. If you're a practitioner at a corporate level with hundreds and thousands of employees, it better be, I think, your only business, right? Like, because you're competing in a massive space. But if you're talking about somebody who's going out there on the hustle, trying to teach people how to do stuff, build a course, build a name for themselves, make themselves an influencer, I think it's a great idea, and that Zach should absolutely do it.
Awesome. Yeah, and I think that makes a lot of sense. I know Chris and I, we've been, even with what we're doing with Amazon, that's kind of been I guess you could say, it's not necessarily a debate, but trying to figure out like what makes more sense to start a community, or maybe start with a mastermind and teach people the things we know, as opposed to, well, we create a course and then we got to get people to buy the course, and then we got to make more courses, and then of course courses change. And so I think there's a dynamic when it's community, because when you get the people in the community, it seems like, and we're both members of the Social Media Pulse community, just to be upfront with everyone, right? People can ask questions and you sometimes can get a different perspective, or actually get questions that you wouldn't have thought of, right? Because sometimes we think we know all the answers, and then somebody will ask you a question like, oh, I didn't think of it that way. And I think, I don't know, do you see that too as kind of a difference between, say, course versus community, as well as it's more interactive?
Well, right. I mean, obviously, like, the course ought to have interaction, right? And so I think, even going back to your question from before about, using Slack, using Discord, things like that, I also wouldn't say that those things are bad. Anybody getting together and having community is great. The reason we did it the way that we did it was because, again, we have that luxury, but also going back to the community is different every time. We chose an open source solution and a kind of a tandem of solutions because of that feeling of, I don't know what we're going to need or want. I don't know how this thing's going to go. And having used some of the more traditional online community platforms in the past, and been in a situation where it's like, we evolved to need something new, and then they would tell us it's not on your roadmap for 2 years, or this isn't on our roadmap now. And then you're in an even deeper pit of despair, because it's like, well, the last thing you told me was in the roadmap for 2 years. So this, if it ever even gets on there, it could be a decade by the time we do that. And so that's why we're doing it that way. But absolutely anything that you can build interaction around, right? And any way that you can do it. Because yes, to your point, Jim, it's better with conversation. Anything's better with a follow-up conversation.
We've got another question this one's from Zach. How should I price my community? I work with Fortune 500 accounts and nationwide marketing agencies for YouTube services now, so the price is way different. And then the second part of that question, which didn't fit into one of my handy dandy banners, is, should I offer a small amount of lifetime memberships, i.e. 1 year cost is a lifelong membership for 10 people or so?
So, I don't have a lot of experience just like straight up charging for a community. But one of the concepts that I've thought about on a regular basis is having services within your community that you've developed, and having people pay for access to that stuff, right? Whether that's like a job board that companies pay for access to, or directory that companies pay for access to. And I think that there's a lot of information out there in terms of how you would charge for things like that. In a question like this for Zach, I don't necessarily have an answer, because I just haven't. I don't have his experience with providing those kind of services and or charging for a community like that.
Well, I like, in sort of what you spoke about earlier, and why you used the service that you did, is you didn't know quite yet, like if you needed to, kind of like, well, it seems to be going this way. You want to be able to utilize something that morphs with it. Like, I think a lot of times we we aren't in control of a lot, especially this stuff, right? And so all of a sudden, Jim and I had this vision for what we wanted for this show. It is not what you see and hear right now. I can promise you that. Yeah. But you move with it because you're not in control with it. Now you don't do things that you are opposed to, right? You have lines that you draw for your quote unquote brand that you have, for this particular show. But you can't, you could sit down and say you have this vision for exactly everything that you want for your community, for your brand, and for whatever. But you got to be malleable. You got to be able to be like a shark and do this and kind of be like, because who knows if Elon Musk buys Twitter one day, or who knows if, whatever happens, something else is launched or whatever, you're going to have to shift, or that rug gets pulled out from underneath you. The community that you did have is gone because you weren't able to accommodate what they really needed and what you thought they did when you started.
Well, yeah, and really, actually, even in converse to like some of the problems I've had on the paid land, on the rented land, they're moving the ball all the time, right? Like, and what the problem I had was being static and feeling like this was never going to change so that I could accommodate my customers. But if you're on the major platforms, you never know what's going to be tomorrow, right? And people make entire careers figuring out what's going to happen tomorrow. And in fact, those people are writing articles on social media posts, because that's one of the biggest things social media managers told us was, I need to have access to sources of authority who actually can track what's going on, or who can get Instagram to talk to them or whatever when they make a change. So
I wrote one of those articles. I was saying when Christine asked me to do that. And see, I think this is the other thing too. Is that you'd be surprised to how many people would like to give stuff like that. And I think that's one of the things that I realized shortly into this thing, like how much content was being given and offered into this. It's like, Judy Fox is writing all of this great stuff. Like there's all kinds of great, I couldn't believe some of this great content that is here. And now it may not exclusively be there. I guess maybe it is, but it is in one place where you can just kind of go in and search and say Instagram stories, and you're getting like the best of the best, and you could find something and you'd be surprised. I was surprised. Listen, Agora polls, social media polls, you guys, Christine, Deb, fantastic people, but I'm like, oh man, this is like, so I think a lot of times it's like, maybe you feel this way, Paul, like people are willing to give something to something like this and just kind of see what happens.
And that's another reason why you have to maintain that trust, right? Because we're out there trying to do something of service to people. And so, I think when we initially started this thing, to your point, we wondered how people would react to the notion that, hey, we're just asking you to contribute to try to be of service to people in a way that they can upskill themselves without a cost. And we ran into almost nobody in opposition to that. And so we've also been overwhelmed by the flow of content that, to your point, Christine, that Deb have been able to bring in, the people that they've been able to bring in and activate in the community. It's been super humbling. Not only that, Ruth Inman, our director of education, she has contacts. We've got the social media world covered with Ruth and Deb. And Christine, with Christine and Deb, and Ruth to another degree, but Ruth brings in this academic component that it really diversifies the group of people that we get to the community as well, and they're educators. And she's got this assessment advisory board that she's built out of professors and people who own agencies who used to be in education, and they're really going to help us professionalize our certifications. So we're excited about that.
And another thing you're doing too, and this might help Zach think through this as well, is, and I know it makes me think about it, is like you have these specific mastermind groups that are in specific areas. Like you have a group for educators, you have a group for kind of like the business owners that aren't maybe necessarily social media managers, but they want to have conversations about like, hey, how do I market my business better? Or, maybe you bring someone in, I know Deb's talked about it, to help them think about like, well, how do I incorporate video, whether it's live streaming or recorded, into our business processes, because that's a big part of what people are doing on social. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
People want to, it's a great point that you bring up. People want to talk to each other, and that's what we found when we did discovery, talking to 40, 50, 60 different social media managers of different personas. They talked about, I want access to people like me. I want people like me to be honest with me about their failures. So then you're getting into conversations about, I can't have it be in an open community because I don't want to talk about how I screwed up this big account last year, but I sure as hell want to talk with somebody about how they screwed up theirs. And then maybe I'll talk about mine, and then we'll learn from each other, and we'll be on a private, unrecorded audio call where we can't see each other's faces or something like that. And so that was one of those things where things kind of changed for me. Like to your point of, as a community manager, I would always say, like, you can't have something that's in a contained environment. Community is all about being out in the open. But then when I thought about people saying that my business is contingent on this sort of persona suggesting that I don't make mistakes. And while there are certain people who might publicly admit one, there are more people who wouldn't. Don't those people deserve an opportunity to find that value in a contained group like that? And yes, right back to Zach, if he can provide unique value that bringing people together, bringing people to his community can specifically provide, then I think that, he'll figure out what his price is from there.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think a lot of times, just like we keep on going to Zach. Zach, you're like the co-guest apparently now on this thing. But I think like today was the day that Zach asked this question about this, right? Well, if you rewind all of our sort of content creator marketing lives, somewhere along the lines we got better by asking someone a question. And if you ask that question in a vacuum, or you try to do it yourself, or you try to research it yourself, you may get an answer, but it may not be as great of an answer as you could if you just put it out into a community and see what comes back to you. And I think once people realize, like, okay, I can pull down this wall and pull down this one. I understand if somebody, can't have that because of their job or whatever. I know LinkedIn used to be like that, where everything was just so buttoned up that you everything had to be very like professional resume, sort of LinkedIn. Now, I mean, you can't scroll without seeing emojis and people doing dances like it's TikTok. But I think in order to get better, would you agree that sometimes you're going to have to pull down a wall and put a question out there and hope that there's going to be somebody in a valuable community like this that's going to give you an answer that's going to help you?
Yeah, well, one of the things I used to talk about was, I don't manage community for the person who asked the question. I manage it for the 1,000 people who get a solution from the answer to the question they asked, right? It's not about the first person. I mean, obviously the first person needs to ask it, but the power of community is the 1,000 people who get a solution from that one question next. And that's why over the years, they've kind of called into question a lot of the metrics about community with lurkers and whatnot, because if you have a really good community where a person asks a question and the first person provides a solution, it doesn't look like there's much engagement because the next 1,000 people aren't saying anything, but they just went and solved their problem and moved on with their day and got benefits, So yeah, like, ask your question, because you never know how many people it's going to help. We were having an academic conversation today as a team about anonymous questions, right? And how they can be serviced. Like, to your point, it goes back to what we were talking about before. There's on a Facebook group, you can ask an anonymous question and the moderator can see it and they'll often ask it. And I'd said in community, anonymity is for your burner Twitter. Community, it's about being yourself and getting an answer, and your own voice is a big part of why your answer ought to be valued or whatever. But then we kind of came onto this idea of, well, what if we had an anonymous questions group? Because sometimes the questions people are afraid to ask are the ones they think will make them look dumb. And if we come out and say, hey, 57 people asked us this question, here it is, and somebody thinks, well, 57 people asked this, maybe I wasn't so dumb to ask it. Maybe next time I'll ask something. So I do think that there's, and this goes away from your question, I do think there's a world where we could have anonymity, but like, it goes against how my brain works, which is everything ought to be go back again, so there are always exceptions to the rule. And you find them here and there. But yeah, it's getting people to change their behavior, getting people to ask questions. It's hard. And it goes back to trust. Like, if you earn their trust over time, if somebody's coming to your community, years maybe as a lurker, for instance, me, I taught myself community 12 years ago or 10, 11 years ago when I started at Intel by ROMing my Android phone. I didn't know how to do it. I would go to XDA developers. I was terrified to say anything to those guys, but I spent 2 years flashing their ROMs in and out. And then eventually I started jumping in there and saying stuff, right? And it took 2 years. And me, as I was a full-time community professional, and I still couldn't say anything because I was so intimidated for all that time. I try to make environments where you don't feel intimidated by the expertise of the people involved. But yeah, that the big barrier is somebody saying like, okay, I need to get out there. I need to put myself out.
Yeah, and we covered it last week on our show with Kelly Normal, Mirabella, and Kendra Losi, and you touched on it here, lurking, and I do my a fair bit of lurking. It's not really creepy, but I think there's a ton of things that you can learn by lurking, right? And if you can obtain the answers to your questions, like you're saying, if somebody gives a good answer, and the 120 people also wanted to know that answer, they got the answer and they moved on. They were like, "This is the answer, that I need." But lurking, I think, sometimes can help you because you guys are looking at the data too. You're not seeing maybe everyone interacting, but you see the views, right? You see how many people. And I always say, "Hey, listen, you might not think people are watching, but they are." Yeah. And it may not be this show. It may be this show 2 years from now. It may not be this show. It may be another show. And we'll get calls and comments about things that we've done a year and a half ago, or that helped someone. And so why not give, and just don't expect that whatever sort of return on your investment of time or whatever you gave to be immediate. It may be a longer game, but yeah, lurking is another way to kind of learn stuff. As long as you just don't sit back in consumption mode, right? At some point, all of this information that's on social media posts, people got to use, right? They got to start doing it.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I also want to build places where people could potentially, when I worked at Higher Logic, they have a community management platform. And I kept trying to get them over the course of the years that I worked there to build in the super lurker tracker because I think I invented super lurker as a term. Maybe somebody else can claim it.
I love it.
I love the super lurker, right? The person who is just getting value and they don't even see a need to say anything because they're just getting value from you all the time. And I also think about even like a light touch lurker. For instance, I had this Nissan car for years that the steering wheel would lock and I couldn't get it started. And I could never remember how to unlock it. God forgive me. For whatever reason, I couldn't retain that knowledge. And I would just Google like Nissan steering wheel locked or whatever, unlock it. And I would end up on this community that was public that I didn't have an account on. And it would unlock my car in 2 seconds, end up at the same thread every single time. I never created an account. And it would save me from like having to call somebody to help me figure this out like an idiot, right? So I didn't like this because I couldn't figure this out. And one of the things I talk about all the time with community is helping people not look like an idiot when they feel like one.
Mm.
A guy came to me once and said, "I've got this thing bookmarked in the community and it helps me every day when somebody brings up something that everyone knows I should know and I forget." And so it's like, we've all been there in our jobs where it's like, right. Oh God, you must know this. It's your job. You have to know it. Otherwise we're really you're going to lose some face. This guy said that to me and I was like, that's one of the more powerful things anybody's ever said is I helped you not feel like an idiot because we all know the power of when you know you're an idiot, but you're able to make people think you weren't. It's huge.
I can't think of a better marketing line for social media. I guess we'll come up with it later. Don't feel like an idiot. Join. I don't know.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, Deb Mitchell says that's totally me, and we've got a ton of people in the chat here on Amazon joining, and the Twitter goddess has joined on Facebook as well. Samantha Kelly, how are you? Chuck Cirk, what's up? The Queen of the Purple Army is lurk listening right now in a grocery store. So we have that. And Off the Jacks, Cheryl, what is up? She says she proudly asks dumb questions. So
Love
you know
that.
what? I haven't heard a dumb question yet from Cheryl, but I can attest she asks lots of questions, which is good. That's how you get better, right?
Yep.
Zach Mitchum, who apparently has been a surprise guest all along here, is very appreciative of all the answers. Lamont Wayne, what is up? You're lurking. Just bringing up lurking brings everybody into the chat.
Out of the woodwork,
so apparently, lurk.
If you're here lurking, let us know. We want to know. Just type in there. Just type in the word lurk, and we're good with that. Just so we can identify who our lurkers are.
That's right. So if you're on any of the other tubes, Twitch, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, head on over to Amazon where our friends are here going nuts. Doug Lehman breaking it down in layman's terms. Just join. Go to dealcasters.live and we're joined here live with Paul Bradley of Social Media Pulse, who has the two of the world's most amazing whiteboards behind him.
I know, it's such a great background.
Right. we didn't put those in the Amazon carousel.
We should have. Yeah, we should have.
They did come from Amazon. So
okay.
Yep. Yeah. So Paul, Chris and I too, right? So wanted to ask you the question, and we talked about this a little bit before the show. What would you recommend we do in trying to start a community of I guess, one, people that are interested in becoming a part of the Amazon influencer program or want to maybe get better? And two, should we try to create a community with those that follow us so they kind of know when we're going live? Because Amazon wants us to get followers. It's just not always the easiest thing to do. How would you see that possibly working? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I would say if you can identify who your followers are, start interviewing them and asking them why they watch the show, what they like to learn from you, and what maybe they're learning from you or not learning from you that they'd like to learn. I could see you guys have had success in developing this show. I'm sure there's a community of people who want to develop their own shows or figure out how to make money off of this. That could provide that sort of unique value when you're saying, hey, come learn how to do Amazon Live and make money off of this. I think that's an opportunity for a community, whether it's like paid or otherwise. If you're just wanting to sort of give that away and say, this is what we learned, we'd like to pass it along to you. I think it starts with the people who are here today. If they are interested in following you, talking to them, saying, okay, all right, why do you listen to the show? And in a lot of cases, you know some of these people, but in some cases you don't. And figuring out what makes it unique to them, spreading it to other people who might find unique value there, using social media, using your management tool and targeting people. I think those would all be good tactics. And one of the things, so it's like, it always starts with who you got at the beginning. And if you know your audience, you're lucky. And so in the case of Agora Pulse, we were really lucky to know our audience and have a lot of people who liked us that would talk to us. In your case, you've been doing the show, so imagine you've got a built-in audience. But then you could always just be looking out for the folks. I mean, you're going to be in Orlando with all these like-minded people. I think, the Amazon Live thing, when I first heard about it like a year ago, I was fascinated because I'd never heard of it. I think a lot of people haven't heard of it. So spreading awareness, A, what is this thing? I never heard of it. I never knew it was a revenue stream. And then B, you guys have been doing it for a while, so you're experts, right? And so figuring out a way to sort of purvey that out to the masses, I think it'd be easy for you.
Awesome. And our other co-host, Zach, has another question. If you're doing a paid community, should you offer a free membership for moderators to help your community stay active? It's actually interesting.
I think all moderators are, you want to do anything to hang on to moderators. So offer them as many benefits as you can. Anybody who's going to be active in helping you out in managing a community is worth their weight in gold. And so if you don't have a pile of gold, find something and give it to them. So whatever value you can provide them, that's the kind of brainstorming you need to be doing on a regular basis for sure.
Yeah. And I see that Deb says that, I know Deb's been in communities probably about as long as you, Paul. I know she's been doing it for a long time, says it's a strategy that totally works. And that makes sense, right? Because they're giving of their time a lot of times, because in a sense, they're like the super fans that Pat Flynn talks about that, if they get more active and involved, they do it out of love of the community, probably sometimes more than anything else. And to your point, if you can reward them more, eventually, great. And I've seen some cases too where people that maybe started out as community moderators, right? They've actually at some points got offered jobs by some of these companies. So I think that's a great point, and also a very good question from Zach.
So when I was, it's a great question. And to that notion, when I was at ADP, I was the only community manager on staff, and we had a really successful program, support community built out. And we had moderators who were from our support team who, out of the goodness of their hearts, would come in after a long day and clean up dozens of questions. And three of them, Stephanie Vosmus, who to this day is running community for them, but she was support. She had 10, 15 years of support under her belt. Stephanie Hertz, Janelle Cooley, these are all people that got hired into community within a year or two of just starting to go there at ADP as something that was outside of their job function. Their boss didn't tell them to do it, to your point. They just felt like they wanted to help people who had problems with this product, and they had the knowledge to do it, and they changed their careers fundamentally out of it. And that's, I think, one of the fun things about it. You guys are in social media. I'm in community. I've been in social media. Everybody who's pretty much over 30 and who's in this business has a story about how they kind of changed their career with this. I think community is a great option, much like social media pulse can help you change your career and pivot to something in social media. I've seen a ton of it in community as well.
Yeah. And something too, I want us to clarify for people, because I think sometimes, social media pulse is not just for social media managers, right? It's for people that want to learn it, right? That's part of the educational part, and learning from people that have successfully done it. So I think that sometimes people may say, oh, well, this is for people that are already social media managers, but that's not really the case. Am I correct there?
That is correct. Yeah. And as we're building our audience, that the full breadth of that will build out. I think that at the beginning, we're up near 1,000 members at this stage. We've promoted to a lot of people. We've promoted to people who know us, and people who know us are going to be more likely to come in at the beginning. But the real goal is to be that 0 to 100% spectrum thing. So where you've got people who are at the high end of social media management, influencers giving keynotes and whatnot, there's value for them there, whether it's just to mentor people or to get their profile raised, or to get exposure to some things that they do so that they can move on and do more influencer things, but also that somebody could build from 0 to that person. And thereby, if we think about that journey, we serve everybody in between.
Yeah. And it's difficult to do, like when you come in at first and there's all of that, it can be overwhelming to someone that's, on any part of that spectrum. So but it sounds like you're building it the right way. And we've got some comments here about back to moderation and managing it. So a number of our viewers and listeners are solopreneurs, right? They have their own brand, whether they're streaming on Amazon or they have a YouTube channel, or doing whatever they're doing, podcasting, etc. And of course, they're building this tribe of people, this community, whatever we want to call it. And I guess, and for us as well, and initially before we started having, teams that we, teams of people that we use to do our collective businesses, doing it by yourself is a lot. It can take a lot of time, whether you're managing a Facebook group that may have 100 or more people, but they're solid, right? They're, like these are not just fly by night, people. These are people, it's all of that stuff. You want to be responsive. You want to manage a really good, it just feels like a lot of time, and I know you're at a level now where you have teams of people, but what may be some practical sort of strategies for the solopreneur who is building that community and maybe even has a Facebook group or Discord, or has some of these things to where they're managing it? How do they sort of manage their time while also being able to create and consume and get better?
Yeah, I mean, this is something we talk about all the time. I talk to agency owners who say they are so focused on their current clients they don't fill the top of the funnel. Or even myself, going back to when I was doing Twitter growth hacking and voice development for 50 clients. Guess whose growth hacking and voice development suffered? Mine, right? And so totally understand when you are functioning, like doing everything on the hustle, working for yourself, solopreneur, our community is sort of built off that persona. And even though we're expanding it out, that's who we are. All of us on this team have run our own businesses. And so, I think about that person all the time. As it relates to community, I think to keep it simple is probably the best way to start, right? If you focus on the people that you know and trust, get them together, have meaningful conversations. Maybe it functions more like a mastermind at the beginning. Use it as, because, the worst thing too is like when you're on the hustle, anytime that you spend with somebody who's not paying you or doing something that's not getting you paid is just pushing back the time that stuff is going to get done. It makes it an hour later that night. And suddenly you're working till 10:30, 11. And it kind of is the same with community, where we think about, I want somebody who's doing their job to not think to go to Social Media Pulse as a distraction from doing my job. I need to go over there because it's going to help me do that job today. So I think that if you get a community together, you're a solopreneur, you think about, okay, what's a group of people that I could get together where we're actually helping ourselves get business that day. We're helping ourselves get better, gain skills, be better at this thing, so that we don't feel like we've just pushed back the end of our day by an hour. Maybe we've actually sped it up a little, or we've sped up the next week's days. And so maybe that's a little bit of kind of a vague answer, but I think it's the same idea that we talk about with community all the time, which is to provide the maximum value and the kind of value that impacts day-to-day life, ending your day earlier, that kind of thing.
That's right, because I think sometimes we do work too much. And I think we got time, I think, for one final question Zach just brought up. And are great communities built better by being in a sub-niche or niche within a niche, or being in a larger niche? It's interesting. I hadn't thought of that.
Yes. I think great communities can be built all of those ways. I think that really active communities can be in tiny little niches. There's a report by Rich Millington, who's kind of a top voice in the online community game, and he's been around longer than anyone other than John O'Bacon. But he's got a report out there that shows there was a community of 500 really active users that was the most active community, or the most functional community, that he audited over the course of several years. And that included some communities with hundreds of thousands of people. And so it just depends on how dedicated the people you get involved are. And so if people are really passionate about that sub niche of a niche, then it's going to be a great community. If people are really passionate about, supply chain, which is just like an overarching thing, it's going to be a good community. It depends on the passion of the people you get involved, and it depends on your ability as the person running that community to bring out that passion, like to help people find their way to exhibit what they're passionate about, even if they don't know they want to. One of the things that's interesting to me that I've seen over the years is really introverted people get involved in community and become really extroverted. And you might be at an event where you're recognizing this person as having been the most extroverted, awesome person in your community, and you meet them and they barely speak or something, but community revealed something in them that they didn't even know was there. So I think that, that's when something's been done right. And so again, to dance around the question even more, it just depends on the level of excitement for the people who are involved.
Amazing stuff. Thanks for all of this. Geraldine Wilkins, thanks for joining us in the Amazon chat. Deb Mitchell is not a super lurker today.
No.
What do we call the polar opposite of a super lurker? Deb Mitchell's on all the tubes.
Super fan, maybe.
Super fan of Paul Bradley, probably. Yeah. I don't know about Dealcasters just yet.
Deb is my partner in crime. She's the best.
Yeah, it's a great team. It's a great team over there, and the folks at Agora Pulse as well. Daryl and everyone there are just fantastic folks. So, Paul, you gave us some items because you are a tech. Can we say tech geek?
Yes.
Guru? What should we call you?
I would fall short of guru and just say I like to buy a bunch of stuff.
Pre-guru.
And use it. Yeah.
Okay. What's up, Alex? So there's a number of these items I'm really intrigued by because they are tech related, but kind of off my grid. One was this Anchor power bank.
Yeah.
That I think you had told me that you bought them for holiday gifts. I think for people.
I bought 8 last year.
Wow.
Yeah, because first of all, I think there was a dramatic reduction, but the reason I bought that is it's a portable power bank that isn't that big.
Yeah, if you've got it on hand, that would be awesome.
That would be. Jeez. It's not that big, and it will charge a MacBook Pro from 0 to 100, which you don't find on a power or any laptop. But one of the things I found over the years is if a MacBook even takes a charge from your portable power bank, it'll destroy it within about 15 minutes, and you'll get like 20%. Whereas that thing, it's not going to. Once you've gone from 0 to 100 on a MacBook Pro, it is going to destroy it. But it's gonna charge it all the way, and that goes for. I have like the new model of MacBook Pro, and it will charge it all the way. So I love that thing. I bought one for me and my wife, and then when it came down for like buying gifts for the whole family, I'm notorious for buying chargers, particularly power delivery chargers. So that's the one with the USB-C little thing in there. It charges your phone it charges anything like 2-3 times faster. So like when I see people to this day with like the normal USB port on their charger, I'm like, you're using the wrong cord. Like, what are you doing? your phone's going to be there all day. So,
right. Yeah. And I think now, and then Jim and I talk about going to Orlando next week for PodFest and VidFest, and like things are opening back up. We're going to be needing these portable chargers even now more than ever, right? To steal Tim Sohn's phrase, but so I'm always on the lookout for a good. And I'm a fan of Anchor's stuff. I actually have 2 chargers, not this one, but I'm giving it a very laser eye. But I love their portable speaker. They have and it's in the best besides the sound, which is important for a portable Bluetooth speaker. The battery is amazing. I mean, I feel like I hardly ever charge it, and I use it every day. I use it outside on my back deck, and I'm like, I can't remember the last time I charged it.
Yeah. The Anchor stuff, I won't buy anything other. Like all my chargers are Anchor. I don't use any native chargers. It's all Anchor stuff. So, and no one's even reached out to me. Anchor, call me.
Oh, they see you now.
Yeah.
They see you now.
Yeah.
That's right. Free anchors for everyone in the Social Media Pulse community. Not just kidding.
Would have saved me a bunch of money last Christmas. That's for sure.
And you've got a Samson Q2U microphone, which we are big fans of. I think it's a new microphone for you. And I think one of the things that I love mostly about the Q2U, and I don't know if you've noticed this as well, is plug and play. Right, goes right into your computer, but you can sound almost as good as Jim Fuse with just plugging. Oh yeah. Like, we'll do an A/B test later, Paul. You're just, I mean, it's close.
All right.
It's a great microphone.
You're too kind. Yeah. You're still propping me up from that guarantee at the beginning. That's what this is.
Oh, yeah. No one's going to be cashing out of the guarantee. This has been money. This has been money. Apparently David S says the new iPad Pro is supposed to have wireless charging.
The one that's coming out?
I guess.
Oh, I've got to check.
I have the newest one. I'll have to check. Maybe it does.
Maybe it does wireless. I haven't tried, but it's right here.
You guys both bought it and didn't know if it did?
No, it's USB-C. I just charge it with the USB-C cord.
Yeah.
And it lasts a while.
The thing for me is that like I don't do much wireless charging. I have this thing here with it. It's like a stand for my phone, and so I put my phone on that. It has like the MagSafe. And so that's the only wireless charging I do, just because it's so convenient that I just like grab it or I look at it, or if somebody's going to come to the doorbell, I just put that there. But for the most part, I find the power delivery cord so much faster than anything. In wireless charging, I often think is slower than using a normal USB. So I'm throwing shade at wireless charging. That's what's happening.
That's a good. I hadn't really thought about that. I mean, because with the Apple Watch, you do have to do the wireless charging, because that's kind of the way they designed it, where you got to kind of throw it on that little disc to charge it up. And but I've never thought about, and I'm kind of like you, Paul. I usually just plug this stuff in. I mean, I have some of those mag chargers. Like I do have one in my car. I do like that because with the case I have, I just stick it on the charger and it'll charge up my phone, as opposed to like, oh, I forgot my cable, right? That I wanted to charge my phone while I'm using Waze. And so I've found to be convenient.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a good point. We'll have to do some research, Chris, and see if it's what's faster. That could be a video.
Well, we're running across the top of the hour, and we didn't get through everything that you gave us in the carousel. But what you did give us, Paul, was an amazing conversation. I know, Jim. I mean, this is just amazing that we were able to share this past hour with someone who knows as much as you do, Paul, about this stuff. I don't know about you, Jim, but I feel like everybody got a little bit better today.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And what's exciting, I mean, not only is exciting, make sure you guys check out the chats. If not, we'll also share it in our show notes with the podcast. You can join the community for free. And we don't want to get in trouble. Deb said to remind everyone that you do something on Mondays that they should pay attention to. I think it's like some sort of news that you put out.
The social media news. Yes. Please tune in for it. Yeah. And
what time is that at?
You better find out. So just come over on Monday.
This is where you can find out right here.
Yeah. Go to socialmediapulse.community. Find me on there, message me on there, and poke around.
Yep. Awesome.
Paul, thank you so much. Everyone here, socialmediapulse.community. Go learn. It's there. It's free. Why wouldn't you want to do this? And Paul, thanks for making good on the guarantee. And as always, don't fear the gear.
Thanks for listening to Dealcasters. Congratulations. You've taken another step forward in your content creation journey. Please don't forget to hit the subscribe or follow button here in your favorite podcast player so you can be reminded every time we drop an episode.
We love hearing from our listeners and viewers. And if you're wanting to watch our shows live on Amazon, feel free to follow Dealcasters Live as well at dealcasters.live. Follow us on Twitter or subscribe to our YouTube channel, where we also included added content that you cannot find anywhere else.
If you have questions about this episode or have something you want us to review, you can also email us at dealcasters@dealcasters.live. Thanks again for listening, and you know the deal. Don't fear the gear.